Not too long ago, I was cleaning out a desk at home, and I found some old photos from my teen tour trip to Israel in 1973, the summer after 10th grade. And besides the fact that my daughter had a good chuckle at the length and style is probably a generous word, of my hair, there were some pictures from the group's 7-day trip to Sinai that really brought me back to something very beautiful and powerful, to the Sinai Desert. Besides being so wonderfully vast and majestic, the desert can be an incredibly frightening place. And I remember once waking up during that week in the middle of the night, lying in my sleeping bag under the stars and being genuinely afraid at the absolute stillness and silence of the place and the vastness of the space that was before me. It was overwhelming. The temperatures in the summer average about 110 degrees during the day and can drop by 30, 40 degrees easily every evening. And simply, if you don't bring with you enough water, enough food, one can become critically ill in a matter of hours. The human being is very frail and very vulnerable in that place. And that's where our people spent 40 years, wandering in that place. This week's Torah portion, Bamidbar, which means in the wilderness, begins on the first day of the second month in the second year following the exodus from the land of Egypt. God spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai. It's a place where things we depend on and rely on for daily existence are often scarce and sometimes just non-existent. Our people were tested time and time again during their time in the desert. And unfortunately, it doesn't really take much of a stretch of the imagination, or really any imagination at all, to recognize the fact that we're now in the midst of a wilderness. During the time of this pandemic, the basic things of life that we usually can take for granted, all of a sudden, these things are so frail and so tenuous. Who would have thought that we'd be in a situation where it would be impossible, near impossible, to make an appointment to see your own doctor, or that you'd worry about touching the door to your favorite market, or that we would recoil in fear if a stranger walks past us and they're not wearing a mask? How unbelievable that we might now be living in an apartment building with hundreds and hundreds of people around us, yet we can be so alone and so isolated. How bizarre that the thought of literally bumping into a neighbor in a small elevator is a scary one. And to those questions, we've been taught that the Torah was not given to us in the towns or in the cities, because those were places of regular, everyday life. Why is it that when we contemplate being in that place, being in this desert, that we are filled with fear? We're asking questions that we would hope we would never have to be asking. Will my job still be there tomorrow? Will my savings still be there tomorrow? What happened to the perfect wedding I'd always dreamed about having that was supposed to take place in the spring or the summer of 2020? What's happening with my education? These are huge questions we usually don't have to ask. Needless to say, we are in the midst of a very challenging wilderness. Our people have long asked, why is it that the Israelites have to spend that time in the desert? Why did God decide to give our people Torah? That most, really almost intimate experience that the Jewish people ever had with God was the giving of Torah. And why did it have to take place in the middle of a desert? Why not in a city? Why not deep in a forest? Why in the midst of a vast and scary and dangerous wilderness did the Israelites have some of their most important and transformative experiences, probably the most so in our entire history? An answer that's often given is that there was no way that Torah could truly be fully given in the towns or in the cities, because those are the places, again, of everyday life. With the noises and the hustle bustle of our routines, we never would be able to discover that there's this small, still voice in us and we have to be able to hear and listen to that voice to grow and to become better human beings. It was in the wilderness that our people became stronger and more resilient. It's in the wilderness that our people were taught to become more generous and more compassionate. It was in the desert that the Israelites learned to build strong community. It was where they learned how to honor parents and to teach their children. So on this Shabbat, and moving forward, let's remember this. Our people made it through the wilderness and began the long and dynamic history that's still unfolding for us every day. There's no reason to doubt that this wilderness today is going to end as well, and that through our challenges today, we too will become stronger and more resilient, that we're learning to be even more generous and more compassionate, that we're becoming an even stronger community, that we're growing in our abilities to honor our parents and to teach our children. In ancient times, through all of this, they survived and thrived, and so will we. And the unfolding of our history will continue long, long into the future. Ken Yehi Ratzon. May it be God's will. And more so than ever, in the midst of such a tough journey, there are those who are ill. And more so than ever, they need to feel that presence of community and our strength. So before we sing Words for Healing on page 33, say the names of people you care about and love who are ill. Say them strong and out loud. And our cumulative prayers, all of us singing, praying together, will hopefully play a role in bringing their healing.